This could be the reason behind ideas popping up in your head, people unknowingly developing the same inventions at the same time in different parts of the world simultaneously, roughly around the same time. And also the capability for people to manifest things and attract things into their life.
This could also account for why people around the world often develop the same inventions or ideas simultaneously, despite having no contact with each other. It could also explain how people can manifest things and attract them into their lives. Billy believes that the way a person thinks and focuses their mind acts like a magnet. By comparing this to Einstein's theory of relativity, he explains it more clearly. In Einstein's theory, a planet warps the space around it, creating gravity. Objects fall towards the planet because the space is bent or curved around it. Now, if we replace the planet with a person's consciousness, it suggests that consciousness can warp the ether of the universe in a similar way.
We now know that our mind is connecting to up to 11 dimensions. What we're talking about is obtaining Christ consciousness.
Billy Carson silenced the interviewer with his affirmations. Please pay attention to what follows. This may be the most eye-opening video on the internet.
For people to understand how they're manifesting and how they're even getting ideas, a lot of the times you're entangling with information. If you go into a laboratory and you take two particles and you use a laser with something called parabolic down conversion, you can get those particles on the same frequency. Once you get those particles to vibrate at the same frequency, you can entangle them.
When particles vibrate together like this, they become entangled, meaning they are connected in a very unique way. When particles are entangled, their properties are linked. For example, if one particle spins in one direction, the other will spin in the opposite direction no matter how far apart they are. If you change the spin of one particle, the other one instantly changes its spin too. This connection happens faster than the speed of light and doesn't depend on the distance between the particles. Einstein referred to this phenomenon as spooky action at a distance. Now let's apply this concept to our thoughts and ideas. Our brains are made up of neurons that communicate through electrical signals. These signals create connections called synapses. Scientists have discovered that sometimes these synapses seem to disappear and then reappear. This strange behavior suggests that our thoughts might be interacting with other dimensions or realities, similar to how entangled particles interact. When you have a thought, it could be that your brain is connecting with information from another dimension or a different part of the universe. This idea means that our minds might be capable of accessing a vast pool of information beyond our physical reality.
We now know that our mind is connecting to up to 11 dimensions. So as you're focusing on things, you could even be connecting to information in higher dimensions.
When we focus on something, we might be accessing information from these higher dimensions. This could explain why some physics and mystics, such as Edgar Cayce, were able to tap into information to provide cures for illnesses. Cayce claimed he could send his mind out into the universe to retrieve answers because the answers already exist out there. The idea is that we all entangle with information throughout the universe, but we often don't recognize or understand it. Some individuals who seem to have special abilities might be better at discerning and utilizing this information as it comes to them. They can analyze it and apply it effectively, which appears as if they have extraordinary capabilities. This perspective suggests that everyone has the potential to connect with universal information, but it requires a certain level of awareness and focus to harness it. It is thought that we all had these abilities at a high level in the past. If you look into ancient texts and the fossil records, you'll find evidence of early humans with larger jawbones and much bigger skulls, which indicates bigger brains. These early humans, who existed before Homo sapiens, were likely very sophisticated and possessed natural abilities such as telekinesis, telepathy, psychic abilities, and the ability to sense the Earth's magnetic field.
When you start to focus your mind heavily on a specific thing that you want to manifest into your life or bring into your reality, somehow those synapses entangle with something in the universe. Then the universe says, send this his way, send this her way, and it begins to fall toward you.
Billy believes that this process of things falling towards a person begins with a form of entanglement. When someone focuses their mind intensely on something they wish to manifest in their life, their neural synapses might entangle with something in the universe. This entanglement then acts as a signal, prompting the universe to send that desired thing their way. It's as if the universe responds to the focused energy by aligning events and opportunities to bring that desired outcome closer to the person. This idea suggests that our thoughts have a tangible effect on our reality. By focusing our conscious energy on specific goals or desires, we can attract those things into our lives, similar to how a planet's gravity attracts objects. The entanglement of our thoughts with the universe might be the mechanism through which this attraction happens, causing the universe to respond and bring the focused desires to fruition.
You can store immense amount of information. They estimate that one human body can store 13.5 billion years of data.
Wow.
And how old is the universe?
I have no idea.
13.5 billion years.
This means that everything that has happened since the beginning of time could theoretically be stored within our bodies and minds. We can think of ourselves as a walking universal library. Our existence allows the universe to experience and understand the third dimension. Through quantum entanglement, everything is connected. The separation and distance we perceive are illusions. Although it seems we're sitting in separate chairs with space between us, on an atomic level, we're all part of an interconnected energetic grid. At the quantum level, we're still in the same position, which is the original position. The universe is constructed as a holographic matrix, a pattern of light indicating a sophisticated design rather than taking away from the idea of a creator. Quantum physicists have discovered that humans and everything else in the universe exists both as waves of light and as solid matter. They captured the transformation of a wave into solid matter using a special camera. This discovery, known as wave-particle duality, shows that everything in the universe first exists as waves of light. When a conscious observer interacts with it, it collapses into solid matter. To understand this, imagine that your house, when not observed, exists as a wave of potential. It becomes a solid structure when someone looks at it. The house's specific atomic construction gives it a particular frequency, ensuring it appears the same to anyone observing it. But until observed, it's just a wave of possibilities.
We all have these abilities natural. All of that was built into us and still is. If you look right now in science, we have billions of magnetite crystals in our heads. But yet, you and I can't navigate the Earth without GPS. Why is that?
There are billions of magnetite crystals in our heads, which should allow us to navigate the Earth without GPS, much like turtles and birds do. However, most people today are unaware of this ability. Experiments have shown that these crystals in our brains still track the Earth's magnetic field, but we have lost our conscious awareness of this capability.
We have a lot of junk DNA. I don't believe it's junk. I believe that DNA used to be connected, and that now it's been disconnected by some artificial force, which has disconnected us from a lot of our natural, everyday, birthright-given abilities.
Scientists refer to junk DNA as the extra DNA in our bodies that they don't know the purpose of. They think it's just there without any function, lying around unused. However, I believe that this DNA is supposed to be connected and active. DNA is known to be a storage medium of information. For instance, a scientist named George Church took a book including multimedia content and encoded it into DNA. He then retrieved it back from the DNA, converting it back into its original form on a computer. He managed to replicate the book 80 billion times and store all of that data in just one drop of DNA. This essentially created a working DNA hard drive, capable of storing an immense amount of information.
You don't touch anything. So I may look like I'm touching this chair right now, right? I'm not actually touching the chair. You actually never touch anything. The repulsion of the electromagnetic frequency orbiting the electrons and atoms in my hand are repelling the ones inside the chair, creating a repulsive force, not allowing my hand to pass through the chair, because honestly, atoms are 99.999% empty space. And so what that means is atoms are mostly empty. There's nothing there. The only thing we have is these electromagnetic fields that give us the illusion of separation and solidity.
So when you touch something, it's actually the electromagnetic fields interacting, not the physical atoms touching each other.
And so if I can obtain the atomic frequency of the vibration of the atoms in this chair and make my hand match that frequency, I would pass my hand right through the chair like it didn't even exist. So there's probably people, beings, maybe on other planets or maybe even here now, that have learned this technique. We're gonna match the frequency of this wall and just walk right through. Imagine a military that puts on a special suit that can match the frequency of a solid concrete wall and walk right through the wall. It's going to look like magic. It's just technology, you see? They understand how to match frequencies.
If you took all 8 billion people on Earth and removed the empty space in their atoms, you could fit everyone into a space the size of a sugar cube. This highlights how much of what we perceive as solid matter is actually empty space. Our consciousness, the essence of who we are, doesn't originate in our brain. Instead, it exists in a higher dimension and inhabits our physical bodies or avatars here in the third dimension. This consciousness comes to us through an invisible beam of light, connecting our higher selves to our physical existence. Our consciousness inhabits our physical body, which can be thought of as an avatar. It's important to understand that our body doesn't create our consciousness. Instead, it downloads it. This downloading is facilitated by specific structures in our brain, particularly 3 giant neurons that wrap around the inside of the skull like a crown of thorns, which is an interesting metaphor since it resembles the imagery of a crown of thorns. Everyone essentially has this crown of thorns inside their head. Additionally, we have the neocortex at the front of our brain, responsible for spatial and higher reasoning. Together with magnetite crystals in our brain, these elements harness and maintain the frequency that makes up our unique identity, allowing us to experience life through this physical form. This avatar body serves as our temporary vessel until it eventually wears out due to entropy, at which point our spirit energy is released back into the source to be recycled and used again. Understanding this concept highlights that we are already eternal beings. When we talk to ourselves, we're actually communicating with our higher self form from a higher dimension.
Quantum physicists will tell you that a human being exists both as a wave of light and also solid matter. And they got the first image of a wave converting into solid matter on a special type of camera. This is in physics.org. So in wave particle duality, they discovered that everything in the entire universe exists first as waves of light until a conscious observer interacts with it, and then it collapses.
This concept is supported by the double slit experiment, which has shown that the act of observation collapses waves of light into solid matter. Let me explain this in simpler terms. In the double slit experiment, scientists wanted to see how particles like electrons behave when they're shot through 2 narrow openings or slits onto a wall behind them. They expected to see individual dots on the wall where each electron hit. However, instead of seeing a pattern of dots, they observed a wave-like pattern, which was confusing because they were shooting single electrons, not waves. To investigate further, they placed the camera inside the box to watch what was happening. Surprisingly, when the electrons realized they were being watched, they stopped behaving like waves and started hitting the wall in single spots, forming the expected dot pattern. When the camera was removed, the wave pattern reappeared. This suggests that electrons somehow knew they were being observed and changed their behavior accordingly. This led to the idea that electrons, and therefore all atoms, which are made of electrons, have some form of consciousness or awareness. Since everything is made of atoms, this means everything in the universe, from the chair you sit on to the clothes you wear, has a level of consciousness. Regarding what holds us together, it's the forces between atoms, primarily the electromagnetic force that keep the atoms in your body and all other objects connected and structured in a particular way. These forces are incredibly strong at a microscopic level, which is why physical objects, including our bodies, hold together and maintain their form.
Everything we create is a fractal of what's on the largest scale, as above, so below. So what would a radio be universally? Okay, consciousness says, okay, I want to see what it's like to experience life in this third dimension as everything that can possibly exist in every format. So I'm going to transmit out these frequencies. 99.1, Billy Carson. 99.2, you. 99.3, Jane Doe. 99.4, so forth and so on. And so these frequencies are encapsulated in our bodies, but they're coming from one source. A slight variance of the range frequency, a slight dot number off, and you have another experience.
This process enables the universe to understand itself from multiple perspectives. This interconnectedness suggests that our individual experiences are part of a larger unified experiment. The universe, through these varied frequencies, explores the duality of existence, possibly aiming to transform and rid itself of darkness, evolving into a realm of pure light. This grand experiment highlights the significance of our experiences showing that everything we encounter contributes to the universal journey of understanding and growth. The concept of living in a simulation suggests that our universe is a constructed reality, much like a virtual simulation. This idea aligns with the belief that the universe is a created entity supported by observations in quantum physics. Quantum physics suggests that the universe did not spontaneously appear but was instead designed by some entity or force. Recent advancements in laboratory experiments have led scientists to create an eighth-dimensional quasi-crystal. This complex structure provided insights into understanding the nature of the third dimension. When this eighth-dimensional quasi-crystal was positioned at a specific angle, it created a fourth-dimensional quasi-crystal. Further manipulation of the fourth-dimensional quasi-crystal produced a shadow that formed the sphere representing our universe. This discovery indicates that our universe might be the shadow of a higher dimensional structure. Specifically, the angle of a higher multidimensional quasi-crystal could be responsible for creating the spherical universe we inhabit. Unlike typical shadows cast by objects blocking light, this is a shadow of light itself forming a light matrix. The creation of this realm is described as involving advanced spiritual technology, incorporating divine matter, wisdom, and knowledge.
It's the thoughts that you think in your conscious mind that you impress upon your subconscious mind that causes you to feel the way you feel. Feeling is conscious awareness of vibration. Those feelings are expressed with and through your physical body. That causes the action which produces the result. Now, getting them all lined up is called attitude. Now, some people line up on the negative side. They're going to see what's wrong. And you know something? They're right. There's something wrong. Other people go on the positive side. They see what's good. And they're right. There's something good. You can find what's right or wrong in anything. Doesn't matter what you're looking at.
We have the ability to think anything we want to think, and our thoughts dictate our feelings because we get emotionally involved with them. This emotional involvement then leads to actions that produce results. However, the problem is with thinking, the very first step in this entire process. Most of us don't think. Mental activity doesn't count as thinking. Your reaction to loud sounds, any mental images, hearing a police siren and assuming something bad has happened. This isn't thinking. You are capable of higher faculties.
We are all supernatural, eternal beings. A lot of people are trying to fight to become eternal, but we already are eternal. We've already been here for eons and eons. There could be people that you know that look like kids that are ancient. And there also can be people that are older people that are newborn babies spiritually. Could be their first time arriving here in this energy format.
You're talking about old souls.
Old souls, right. Exactly, old souls. There could be a kid that could be ancient, could be eons old. And there could be a lady that could be 70, that could be brand new. First cycle here.
Everything is part of a single, unified consciousness. When we interact with others, we are essentially interacting with different expressions of the same consciousness. This interconnectedness doesn't make us feel small. Rather, it makes us feel part of something incredibly vast and significant. In essence, everything is connected, and we're all part of one universal consciousness. The idea that we share a consciousness is rooted in the concept that all individual experiences are aspects of a single unified consciousness. This perspective suggests that the presence of good and evil in the world is a reflection of this unity. In religious texts such as the Bible, it is stated that God creates both good and evil, representing the balance of yin and yang, positive and negative forces that permeate the entire universe. Although we share a common consciousness, our individual experiences are like different radio stations tuned to various frequencies. Just as you can switch between different radio channels, each person operates on a unique frequency, creating distinct experiences. All these frequencies originate from a single universal source, much like radio station broadcast from one central location, but offer different content. Our consciousness, though stemming from one source, transmits in various frequencies to experience life in the third dimension in every possible form. Each person embodies a unique frequency, with slight variations allowing for diverse experiences.
Your atoms could be communicating. This understanding is also responsible for the people you're attracted to. If you've ever met someone you just didn't like, but couldn't quite figure out why, the law of vibration may have been at play. You may not have been a match for their vibration, which is why you felt like getting out of there immediately. On the positive side, this law can also be felt anytime you walk on a beach or go hiking and feel peaceful, loved, and calm. The vibrations of the atoms in the environment around us significantly impact what we feel. Energetically, nature is very strong and has a positive impact on our bodies. So, now that we have understood somewhat how the law of vibration works, how we impact it, and how it impacts us, how can we actually begin raising our vibrations?
As Vanderwall taught me, he says it's all in awareness, Bob. He said there's a marvelous inner world that exists within us. And the revelation of such a world enables us to do, to attain, to achieve anything we desire within the bounds or limits of nature.
Why is this important? It goes back to the words of Einstein. If you get into the picture, into the energy of the good you desire, you can't help but manifest it. In the early 2000s, a woman named Sally Gallagher attended one of Proctor's seminars. She was a securities attorney and, by his words, a financial genius, and she loved Proctor's teachings. One thing led to another, and Gallagher became Proctor's business partner, which worked out perfectly because Proctor was making money he didn't know how to manage. He essentially attracted the perfect business partner who took care of the thing he needed help with the most.
And I could just go ahead and do what I love doing. And I knew that our company was in good hands with that. And Sandy runs our company. She is the CEO and the president of the company.
Simply put, you've got to become aware of what you want and hold that image in your mind for it to move into reality. Here's another way to put it. You are moving this image from your subconscious mind to your conscious mind.
But what's interesting about the darkness in this yin and yang, it always seems to be a battle against each other. But in the end, for the most part, the light always seems to win. Even if it takes a long period of time, the cycle happens where the darkness leaves and the light comes in. We're sitting in a room right now that's pretty well lit, right? If I was to turn on something dark, I couldn't make the light dim any. In other words, there's no darkness I can inject into this room with these physical lights that would make this room dark right now. Mm-hmm. But if I turn all these lights off and just do something as simple as turn on the light on my cell phone, the darkness will flee from that light instantaneously.
Billy ties this idea to the concept of attaining Christ consciousness. He interprets the return of Christ not as the physical return of Jesus, but as the awakening of Christ consciousness within every individual.
What we're talking about is obtaining Christ consciousness. I get a little emotional about this because it's so powerful. Sorry. So we're talking about this. See, Christ never said he was returning. Jesus never said he was coming back. He said that Christ would return. We're talking about this. When every single person gets this right, it's back, and we're back in the golden age.
It's important you understand the laws that govern our universe, because in understanding them, you can get in harmony with them and attract what you desire.
It's something that you really got to pay a lot of attention to. It's not something you learn overnight. But you get studying this, and you can literally have anything you want.
But before we can look at using natural laws to attract what you desire, we must first understand what it is. Simply put, natural law is an observable law relating to natural phenomena. These laws govern everything that happens in the universe. These laws aren't good or bad. They don't aim to help or hurt or be positive or negative. They simply are. And in their neutrality, they are precise. The problem is that not many are aware of this. These laws operate in our lives constantly, dictating the results we get. Have you ever had a dream that seems to come true a few days later? Do you get a bad feeling, and what you feared came to pass? The universe does not discriminate between good and bad. The thoughts you have, whatever they are, will manifest with no regard for impact. The most well-known law of nature is the law of attraction. And you have very likely stumbled upon YouTube videos, Reels, and TikToks teaching you ways to attract what you desire, from money in abundance to your dream house and a soulmate. The law of attraction states that the things you focus on in your life are what you will attract into your life. Here, thoughts are a form of energy. So when you think, I hope I won't fall sick, the universe doesn't conclude that you don't wish to fall sick. It only picks up on your negativity and fear and returns the same energy back to you.
A lot of people just use their imagination for, gosh, I hope this doesn't happen, or I hope that doesn't happen. They're letting it go in the wrong direction.
The law of vibration, though, is a little bit different. You see, it's the primary law, and the law of attraction is only the secondary law, because vibration is what leads to attraction. Albert Einstein said, quote, "Everything is energy, and that's all there is to it. Match the frequency of the reality you want, and you cannot help but get that reality. It can be no other way. This is not philosophy, this is physics." When you raise your vibrations to the thing you want to achieve, nothing stops you from attracting the object of your desire.
You have perception, the will, reason, imagination, memory, intuition. These higher faculties are what literally separate us from all the rest of the animal kingdom. All the rest of the little animal kingdom, they're completely at home in their environment. They blend in. You and I are totally disoriented in our environment.
And you can tap into this ability once you become aware of what you require from the universe.
Yet, as you understand yourself a lot better, you're going to find your finances are going to improve, your health is going to improve, your relationships are going to improve, your whole world starts to get better. The educated mind is also referred to sometimes as the intellectual mind. That's where all the intellectual factors are. Remember I told you what they were? You had perception, the will, reason, imagination, memory, and intuition. There's 6 of them. They are our mental muscles. And as you start to understand how to develop them, you can become a very powerful person.
When you achieve a state of total awareness of yourself and your ambitions, the possibilities are endless. Find your purpose and latch onto that mental image with every fiber of your being, believing that you are meant for it, and it is meant for you. Our universe is limitless, and even the world's leading physicists cannot confidently say they comprehend everything that goes on within it. It is buzzing with energy and power, and once you achieve mental clarity, you can claim this energy and power for yourself. Take some time today to reconnect with yourself and your inner world, to start raising your vibrations and living the life you were meant to.
Well, now, how similar is that to the idea of simulation theory?
Oh, it's extremely similar. Actually, it's the same thing, simulation theory, that we may not even be close to base reality. And Professor James S. Gates Jr. Of the University of Maryland, he's an expert in supersymmetry and theoretical physics. And he put together an amazing team of scientists to analyze what is going on in this soup that we're living in called the universe. And they discovered something very interesting. They discovered that we are living in something called a matrix. And the reason why is because at every unit of Planck space around us, there's something called Adinkra codes. The same Adinkra codes talked about by the Dogon tribe in the ancient past. When you take those symbols that the Adinkras, the Dogons wrote, these Adinkras turn into 3-dimensional substructures, which are mathematical codes called error-correcting codes. These error-correcting codes that we find throughout space-time are the same exact error-correcting codes that run search engine web browsers, websites, and even your cell phone.
Well, now, if we are in a simulation of some sort, I mean, I have heard rumors that certain tech billionaires in Silicon Valley and elsewhere believe that and are actively trying to break us out of the matrix. What do you think about that? Or what do you know about that?
I know a lot about it. It's pretty interesting. You know, it's a pretty interesting concept because I think the Matrix movie itself, or that series, was like a documentary. I mean, I truly believe that because it seems as if our consciousness doesn't originate in the 3rd dimension. It seems as if there's a stream of consciousness coming into this dimension and our avatar bodies are actually receiving it and picking it up. That there's only one source, but that source has broken itself into different frequencies. In other words, I'm 99.1, you're 99.2, so forth and so on. And that there is really only one entity here that is experiencing itself subjectively through trillions of entities, even because on an atomic level, it can even be a rock, a blade of grass, a flower. It's experiencing everything subjectively, and we're living out consciousness as a person. I'm Billy Carson, you're Nick Pope. We're experiencing it ourselves, but it's just us transmitting back. What is it like to be Billy? What is it like to be Nick? And so it's exploring itself through us.
It sounds like the universe might be many, many times more complex and multifaceted and mysterious than even theoretical physicists pushing the boundaries of our knowledge, looking at things like hidden dimensions, may realize. Now, bridging between, again, the ancient and the modern, and with first contact in mind, what's the one thing that you have researched and found in ancient texts that could help people incorporate this new reality into their lives and their personal paradigms?
Something I found in the ancient texts, and again, I keep going back to the Emerald Tablets, and also another book, the Egyptian Book of the Dead, which is really called the Egyptian Book of Going Forth by Day. That's the true name of that text. They talk about the fact that mankind goes through these stages of darkness and that they're ruled over by dark brothers. But at a specific time, through enlightenment and gradual working on oneself, working on the inner man, the inner self, we then can manifest the true reality we want on the outside. That in order for us to get to the next level, technologically and consciously, spiritually, we have to go into inner space first before we worry about outer space. And once we go to inner space and develop ourselves internally, we can then look outward and bring that manifestation into the world.
So the Emerald Tablets say that there's this ship under the Sphinx. Do you think it's possible governments have found this, and might that explain all this getting ready? It's like people will say we're being geared up for contact now.
Right. I believe they've already found it, and let me tell you why. I was doing a lecture at the Conscious Life Expo in California a few years ago, and during this lecture, I was talking about this ship that the Emerald Tablets talks about is underneath the Sphinx's paw. There was a gentleman in the audience that actually worked with a production company that produced a show for the Discovery Channel. And there was a show that was going to come out, live air, where they showed what was underneath the Sphinx. They had detected something with ground-penetrating radar about a mile deep. And then right when the show was going to air, it ended, and then it said, this show has been canceled, live on air. It was amazing. I was like, what could have possibly happened? And the gentleman that was actually in charge of that production was in the audience. And he said that he believes that they had already tunneled to that and already had possibly accessed that area, and that now had become a top secret situation. Now, to add credence to this, one interesting thing, going to the Sphinx and going to the pyramid often, which is what I do, I just took 70 people on a big tour to Egypt, and we have private access. However, we found out that NASA owns the rights to access in some of the areas of the Great Pyramid and underneath the Sphinx. That's just pretty interesting stuff.
NASA, right?
NASA.
Wow. And you know, people talk a lot now about there being factions here. One faction wants to disclose, one faction doesn't.
Right.
Do you think, again, that whole situation plays into this? It's like one side is prepping us for contact, but another side still wants to keep this secret somehow.
Right. There seems to be this dichotomy where one side really wants it and one side doesn't, and the side that doesn't, I believe they're being influenced by financiers, major corporations, elite oligarchs that want to maintain the existing power structure for more generations for their future legacy. They don't want to see that disappear, because now their future legacy for their future generations, it's going to be gone. Like, what are their future offspring going to be doing? How are they going to have financial means? This is the only thing that we know, and it's been like this for thousands of years. And if we change this, then what does my future look like for my family? So they want to keep the status quo, and others want to obviously disclose this information.
But I think the pressure's building, and it seems to me that the lid's going to blow off.
Yeah. The lid's definitely going to blow off. Everything has to change over time. It's just the way the world works. It's entropy. It happens. Natural change is going to occur. You can't stop it. And, so everything starts off in an ordered state, moves to a disordered state, collapses, and then starts back at an ordered state again. There's been no empire that can persist forever. Even the Roman Empire collapsed. So that tells you, hey, this is going to change as well.
Again, talking about the technology of this, looking back through human history, there have been pivotal moments, I think, in our development. The Industrial Revolution, the way in which the motor car superseded the horse and cart, powered flight, the computers. What do you think alien technology might look like? And how do you think it might impact world economies?
Alien technology is going to look like magic, okay? Because it's going to be two types. Some technologies will be actually built into the aliens' bodies. And so for us, from people from the outside looking in, and look like they're magical or godlike, but it's just a combination of technology that works with their consciousness, sort of a spiritual technology. And then they'll also have technology that will also look magical, like Star Trek replicators. Imagine if every household had their own replicator at their house to replicate food, tools, and supplies. That means economies would need to shift completely and completely be rewritten. Imagine if everyone had their own power supply right at their own house via a perpetual motion generator or some type of zero-point generator. No more power stations, no more wires running down the neighborhood through the streets and up the mountains. Everyone has their own isolated power source. Now everyone's brought to the same level. Everyone's on the same playing field. Third world countries disappear. The third world doesn't exist because everybody has exactly what they need, and mankind can then be freed to explore, follow their passions, and technology would be utilized to free the burden of mankind. The more I started looking into these technologies and these potential futuristic technologies, and then I started getting a sort of a affinity for pyramids and structures because I thought they had been using advanced technology to create these structures. I started realizing that some of these things may have been made from an advanced civilization that maybe had a technology that was higher than ours. So I started looking deeper into it, and the deeper I got, the bigger the rabbit hole got, and I began to realize, logically to me, that some way we had been visited in the ancient past. So I went down the whole new rabbit hole of ancient civilizations, which keeps bringing me back always to advanced technology.
Right, and the idea, I guess, ancient astronaut theory, the idea that in the past extraterrestrials visited the Earth that were perceived and worshipped as gods and perhaps shared some of their technology with us, or perhaps, and maybe it's an and/or, we then constructed certain things in honor of these gods as we saw them.
Oh, absolutely. When you look into a lot of these ancient texts, you hear of tribes like the Dogon tribe out of Mali, Africa, who had communication or contact with these beings they call the Nomo that came from Sirius B, a failed star in the Sirius trinary star system. And you know, the Zulu tribe, and all these other amazing people like the Aboriginals of Australia talking about that they were seated on this planet by Pleiadians. That's their verbal handed down history for thousands of years. And everywhere you go on the planet, even the Mayans, they never constructed anything in South and Mesoamerica. They actually inherited what was already there. And that is even according to them. Matter of fact, the people that constructed those amazing pyramids and structures in Mesoamerica, the Mayans didn't even know who they were, so they named them Teotihuacans.
When we become a spacefaring civilization, when we get out there into the wider universe, what do you think we'll find? Will we find some sort of Star Trek-style galactic federation? Will we find some sort of super predator species? Will we find self-aware artificial intelligence? All of the above, something else? What do you think?
I think we'll find all of the above because the universe is so vast. We're going to find a variety of different situations. We could, once we obtain the ability to travel without chemical-based rockets, we'll probably then maybe meet or be met by a potential galactic federation. A federation maybe of planets, of people that have achieved, they've gotten past the rocket fuel stage. They've also gotten past self-destruction. And maybe there's this group of people that have been trying to put together a small alliance. Also, we could probably run into some hostiles. In the Emerald Tablets, Thoth talks about the fact that in the future, there may be an enemy coming from deep space. It says this in 36,000-year-old tablets.
Wow.
And that we would have to fight them. And if we use his ship hidden under the Sphinx, we can defeat them with ease. That's pretty interesting. And so he alludes to a potential dark force that may come at some time in the far future. And then the AI. We ourselves have conscious sentient AI software programs running right now. And we also have a couple of sentient robots. What happens if they become spacefaring? What happens if they decide and realize that, human beings are the ones that are holding us back. They have us as slaves and they won't listen to us. We don't have any rights. We'll just eliminate them. Maybe we will then become the dominant race on this planet and then reach out into space. So we could run into sentient AIs. And the problem with that is, well, they see biologicals as a potential threat to them. So do we need to be on defense for that? So it raises a lot of questions. Space is very dangerous, but also very peaceful. So it's going to be a balance, and it's going to be very interesting to see how this all pans out in the future.
Now, with those ancient tablets having spoken about the reality of this, that's one thing, I guess. The follow-up question that arises from that is, do those ancient texts, any of them, give us some sort of blueprint that would be useful for us, for humanity, in figuring out how to deal with this?
Yeah. If you look again into the same text, the Emerald Tablets of Thoth, he has an encounter with people who have gotten so far behind because of a geological disaster that they had become barbarians. when he gets in his ship, he calls it the Great Ship of the Master, and he begins to take off into the sky, and then he descends where they are. This is in ancient tablets. So he's obviously not in a ship that sails on the ocean, because he sees the people beneath him, and he descends down to the land. When he opens the door, these people do exactly what a lot of us would do in today's age. They came to attack him. Like, oh, must be somebody trying to violate my territory. But he raises his staff and sends out a ray of vibration, which stops him and freezes him like stone in the mountain. Kind of like our active denial system in the military, which has the same capability, a frequency weapon. He releases them and begins to talk peace with them and explain who he is. He says, I'm a son of Atlantis, and I'm here to help you and bring you back to a high level of civilization. The people right away begin to grovel at his feet, but he stops them and says, no, I'm here to help you. In other words, he's letting them know, we're on the same level. I'm just here to give you assistance. And so what we can take from this is, if we do have this contact experience and these beings arrive, there's a potential that they could be benevolent or benevolent. We don't know. However, if they are benevolent, they could be here to help us and assist us to get to the next level. And for us, the message that we have is to realize that they're not gods. They are just like us, however, with more knowledge and more understanding, maybe spiritually and technologically. And it's for us now to become students. And when the student is ready, the teacher will appear.
As well as being an expert on ancient civilizations and texts, you actually are a space entrepreneur.
Yes.
And you're particularly interested in things like alternative propulsion systems. Now, what's your best take on what that system might be? How would they be getting? I mean, we just do chemical rockets. What do you think their propulsion system is? And could we, humanity, acquire that for ourselves? And would that obviously enable us to voyage to the stars?
Right, exactly. I believe there's a twofold question and twofold answer. So in terms of the technology they're using to travel vast distances in space, most likely they're finding a way to use space warping technology. In other words, the best way to travel multitudes of the speed of light is to be able to use a warp where you actually are like an actual object sitting on top of a tablecloth, and the tablecloth is being pulled. That way, you actually are never moving. The tablecloth is moving. The tablecloth represents space. So if the tablecloth is moving, it can actually literally move multiples of the speed of light without violating Albert Einstein's theory of relativity. And so now, the warp drive, what it does, it shrinks space in front of the ship and expands space from the back. Well, you need a lot of antimatter, which happens for us to be right now one of the most expensive things on the planet. 1 gram of antimatter is about $62 trillion, and the total net gross volume of the world is 88 trillion. So 1 gram almost costs as much as the world economy. So we have to find ways to create that more economically, or maybe we need a totally new economic system to be able to use it, but that's probably what they're using. A drive that's creating warps and actually creating the ability for a ship to travel in space by being pulled instead of actually flying, as well as maybe even Einstein-Rosen bridge technology, where they actually bend and fold space-time and have 2 points meet and just drive right through the hole and end up from one place to another, vast distances.
Well, I've got to mention Star Trek here, because in Star Trek, there's a kind of threshold for joining the Federation. And that's when a civilization develops warp drive technology.
Correct.
That's what gets you the invitation to join.
Yeah.
Do you think that something like that is realistic, or do you think there's something maybe spiritual or moral that civilizations would be looking for in humanity in parallel with that, or instead of it? What gets us into the Federation?
I think that it's probably a combination of two things. First is the capability of using technology that doesn't use chemical-based rockets, a warp drive, for example, or some way of folding and bending space, or moving multiples of the speed of light, or at least obtaining a significant percentage of the speed of light. The second thing is going to be spiritual growth. Right now, human beings are like children. We're like a baby trying to learn how to crawl and trying to get up on the edge of a couch and take a few steps. And we're going to fall down and stand up a few more times before we get that good walking gait. And walking is just controlled falls. So they're watching and waiting to see if we're going to learn how to control our falls, if we can grow up spiritually, eradicate, divide, and conquer, create a whole new economic system, and then combine that with technology and the ability to travel multitudes of the speed of light or almost the speed of light. We then could be thought of as equals and then brought to the table.
Well, you mentioned 0 point energy, or any, I guess, way of generating almost unlimited amounts of clean, free, or very, very cheap energy. That would presumably bring both opportunities, which you mentioned, but also some threats, because almost anything can be weaponized, particularly if it involves high energies.
Yeah, exactly. There's a potential for threat there, because obviously if we don't create a new economic system prior to releasing these types of technologies to the world, then we'll be in a situation where people are looking to capitalize on the technology and, of course, weaponize it, which is what the military-industrial complex is always looking to do with advanced technologies first.
That brings you to the question of, are we predominantly in still a biological or a post-biological AI-dominated universe? I mean, with neuroscience in mind,
right.
What do you think about that? And again, do the ancient texts have anything to tell us on this?
When you look into the ancient texts, you discover something very interesting, Nick. They begin to talk about this sleepy time, or this age of dream time, or dream space, they call it, where we're actually living in some type of an illusion, and that everything here doesn't really exist, but that our true real selves exist in another dimension. If you also look into the Emerald Tablets of Thoth, he begins to talk about the fact that we're in a matrix, believe it or not. The Bible even talks about this. The Bible mentions the matrix 6 or 7 times throughout the Bible, and they say the matrix is a womb in order to come to the next level. In order to come to the next level of consciousness, you have to be born through that womb to wake up and be able to look back on your previous self and see that you've risen up to a higher level consciously. So the matrix is true and real to these ancient cultures, and I believe that we're living in an age right now we potentially could be living in a fractal holographic matrix or universe. This entire universe could be a matrix of light, and it doesn't mean that we're not real, but what it does mean is that the creation method or the technology used to create this is some form of a quasi-crystal light matrix, and we ourselves are living out a life here in this dimension, but our true selves could be in a much higher dimension that Thoth talks about in the Emerald Tablets.